for our PsyD program. I also serve our Doctor of Ministry, which is part of the seminary, and that's on our Portland campus. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with our Portland campus of George Fox, but that's where the seminary is housed. That's where counseling and social work are housed. And so I serve two different, but in some really beautiful ways. There's overlap in the types of students that we draw for PsyD, and then the Doctor of Ministry. I've been with George Fox about 8 years, working in admissions and in some various departments around Fox. I love it. So I'm here as a
And you invited someone to join us tonight.
did invite Kyle Webster, current PsyD student, and Kyle also serves on the admissions committee, which I just want to give a shout out to the fact that Kyle has done that several years, and while the rest of you are on Christmas break, Kyle is volunteering time to review files and make sure that candidates are really thoughtfully considered for the program. So I appreciate all the work that you've given us for a long time.
And I'm Bethany Ramse, and this has never happened before, but I think someone in this room takes a class with my husband, who is a professor of economics. Anyone but Abby? Just right to So yes, I have a little bit of a dual connection here. Jonathan is a professor of economics in the College of Business, and I do the admissions counseling for 4 different degree programs that all fall under what's called the Graduate School of Counseling. I'll go into those details, but I invited Haley to be here tonight. Haley graduated in 2018 and did our spring semester start almost exactly a year ago. Haley, you recently, could you just mention the program transition you went through?
So I started with the marriage, couple, and family program, but I changed to clinical mental health actually this semester. Mm-hmm. So the programs are really, really similar at the beginning, and so I switched right when they start to, the classes change a little, so yeah.
Great, so Kyle and Haley might jump in as we're working through some of the information we organized for you, but we'll also make sure to dedicate some time for you to ask them specific student experiences. And just since it came up and Ty mentioned it, on the counseling side, we don't have any students on our admissions committee. So in case Haley's wondered who was on my admissions committee, it's just the faculty for us. So.
Yeah, the student involvement in the admissions process is unique to PsyD at George Fox. And really, I've not yet worked in an institution that has involved students. So it's a different model, but for Fox, it's just PsyD that we do that.
Okay. Well, we put together some information for you, first of all, about the process of exploring graduate programs, what to research, how to prepare for applying. We'll start with some of that information, and then we can dive into more specifics about these 3 degree programs, or sets of degree programs. Anything else, Ty, you want to mention as we get started?
I just want to say thank you for spending your Wednesday evening with us during a crazy time in the semester. It's just, we're grateful, and it's just wonderful to see that you have such dedication and interest to come and spend time. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we get quite a bit of questions from undergrad students, especially at George Fox, who are maybe a couple of years into the program, about where do I start? What do I even research if I think I may want to go to graduate school, and what should I be looking at? So a few things to mention here, and Ty and I might jump in with how our programs are a little bit different, and then I'll try and remember to mention social work. One of the things that you're going to want to pay attention to is whether the programs you're looking at are accredited. And when you are applying to undergraduate school for a bachelor's degree, you probably heard the phrase regional accreditation, like, oh, it's important to graduate from a regionally accredited school. That's a system that's unique to the undergraduate experience. That means that the school you're applying to meets national standards, it's recognized as a formal, respected university. When you get to the graduate level, programs are accredited within different fields. So body or the organization that accredits a PsyD program is totally different than the organization that gives accreditation to a counselor education program or to a social work program. So you're going to need to know, depending on which type of degree you're looking at, kind of what the accreditation is for that program that you should pay attention to. I'm going to share a little bit about philosophy and faculty types.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a given that most of you are here at Fox because of the philosophy, the ethos of this place, the Christ-centered view, but you know, that could look different as you're looking at grad programs. And so beyond the stats that you might see, dig a little deeper and find out more about why that program exists. What is their mission? What do they consider themselves to be, and how will they train you in that? And I know that that's something that you may be already doing, but that often involves reach out to your admissions counselor, but connect with faculty, and we are happy to set up conversations with faculty, and so always know that we'll connect you if you're not already connected to have those conversations. Faculty should be, no matter where you're looking at grad school, they should be so willing and wanting to talk to you about this. So do your research and talk to your admissions counselor, look at your websites, talk to students and alumni, but get an audience with faculty as well.
Yeah. You'll want to pay attention to what the format for the program is. For example, our MSW program is only offered currently in a full-time format. So there's no option to be working really part-time or full-time while completing that degree. That's a helpful thing to know before you get into the application process. It's a similar format for PsyD, whereas counseling has more flexibility to be on a 2-year route, a 3-year route, a 4-year route, so you could be working part or full-time if you need to be. So good thing to know about the programs you're looking at. And similarly with the schedule. Even in our part-time route doesn't mean you can take classes absolutely whenever you want. All of our classes in the Graduate School of Counseling are offered in the evenings and on weekends, so that we have daytime hours free up for students who do need to work. Some of the classes have daytime sections, but not all of them. So we want to be careful people don't assume they could take all their classes in the daytime, for example.
Speaking of counseling and the schedule, what about when a student reaches their internship phase? How does their schedule change, and how might that affect a part-time student who's working during the day?
Yeah, so 3 of our counseling programs do require about 20 hours of availability during the final year of the program for your internship. School psychology is a full-time internship in your last year of the program. So at that point, people do need to flex work schedules and start thinking about maybe making some adjustments. Sometimes we've had some really proactive students who have sought out internship sites based on the schedule that internship site can offer, but that's not necessarily a guarantee. Yes. And then something I like to mention related to cost, I might have some other insight, but make sure if you're weighing your options that you know whether you're comparing a tuition system that's just tuition or one that's tuition and fees. So on paper, sometimes George Fox is a little bit more expensive than another program, but we don't charge you the library fee and the technology fee and the science building fee and student health fee. And when other schools do then and add those on, sometimes we're way more affordable. So just make sure you know if you're comparing apples to apples. It's also common for students to call me and say, oh, we don't have any scholarships or graduate assistantships. Well, this school does. That's great. Also ask them how many and how many people apply for those spots. Actually, I had an applicant this semester who admitted that she turned us down for our counseling degree program because she thought she could get an assistantship at another school, and that would kind of be her golden ticket to paying for education. And they had 100 applicants for 3 TA spots, and she didn't get it. And so just make sure you know what your odds are if you're banking on a financial option.
We've also seen cost structures where in other institutions where it looks like there are a lot of scholarship opportunity, but they've actually built it into the tuition cost already, so the tuition cost is higher. Scholarships might not offset as much as you think, but it seems like they're plentiful. We see that as a cost sort of strategy as well, but we're so upfront. We're really clear here, and I love that. You can easily find the exact costs.
I'm curious, Kyle or Haley, whether you were applying to only George Fox or other schools, how did you go about finding some of the information you needed for decision making?
Yeah, so I applied to more than just Fox, and I'm trying to think of how I receive information. I mean, definitely, using Google, use the internet. But getting to know who the admission counselor is and being in contact with them, I think that also just shows initiative on your end that looks really well for the program you're applying to. I also, Ty brought it up, if you can make contact with a faculty member, presenting interest in their research or something like that, that's always good, and you can get more information about the program that way. So I think just trying to work on some networking skills in this process is really helpful, and that's what I use. So and every program should have their statistics, their numbers all reported on their page too, which is really helpful. But definitely getting in contact with the people that their names are associated with the program, that would be good.
Yeah, I also applied to other programs besides Fox. But as far as getting to know information, I also recommend not only reaching out to people who are heads of the program, but also meeting with them in person and seeing what they have to say. Because over the phone, I feel like you can easily forget to ask questions or whatnot, versus if you meet in person, they have all their information, you have all your questions. And then as far as getting more information on Fox, I met with Chris Hayes a ton. And then also I met with Bethany one time too. I believe it was fall semester of my senior year, and had a billion questions and just ask anything you can think of, honestly, because there are little things you forget to ask that will come up later, whether it be about your internship or something like that, that could sway you one way or another about school. So.
And this isn't true of this crowd because I've talked to several of you already, but when we have applications that come into our system that have not contacted any of us before, it makes us sometimes wonder, well, how vested are you in this program when you haven't reached out to anyone? It's great that you completed the app, and you look good on paper, but are you really interested in this place? So it's just another good reason to make contact. Great.
So some of the details, if you're trying to decide what does that even mean, what details do I need to look for, looking at the admissions process, you're going to want to know when the start date is. Are they a program like PsyD and social work, or it's just a fall start every calendar year? Or is it like counseling, where you can start in the fall, the spring, or the summer semester? There might be some options. When are the application deadlines? Is there an early deadline or regular deadline? Sometimes, maybe not here at Fox, but even at other schools, those might be almost a full year in advance of your start date. So it's good to start looking a little bit early. Find out what the admission requirements are. We tried to make that really clear for you this time with just straightforward information for each program here at Fox. I brought this up. Double check what the required references are. For counseling, for example, we don't receive any written letters of recommendation. References all need to complete a form that our faculty have put together. Is it similar in PsyD?
Yeah, so what's interesting about ours is that your references will complete a form, but we actually like them to also submit a letter.
I have to find out.
Yeah, they don't have to, but it's good if they do.
And sometimes a program might require a professional reference, but even then, what does that mean? An academic reference, does that mean a faculty member? Is it okay if you use your advisor? There's a lot of questions you can find out around there. And then just other important dates and deadlines. For example, interview dates. It's great if you're invited to interview, but then if you can't make it, that's going to be problematic. So just knowing all of those dates is helpful. Good to go on that. So we put together some best practices. I think you should tackle number 1, Ty. It's more pertinent, I think, for you.
Yes. Well, in the world of grad psych programs, typically the timeline is far in advance of the start of the program, as some of you know that are applying currently. And sometimes it seems like it's so long away before I start, but we really start a year in advance in terms of when the application is due. And that gives us ample time to invite people for an interview event, which really for us is an event. It's a full day. And then APA has guidelines around when we as a school tell them who has committed to us. So after interview, and we send out decisions, and then candidates need to let us know in a time frame. So it's quite a process. So just looking at that, and some of you have done that beautifully, far in advance to make sure that you're not missing any of these crucial deadlines, because like in PsyD, our timeline is actually dictated by our accrediting body, by APA. So that's why we work so far in advance.
Some of you know Christina. She's also been on our, well, she's still on our admissions team. She's worked previously with our MSW program. If she were here, she would tell you to utilize one email address. Things sometimes get mixed up or lost. I've had a student where I've had 4 email addresses, and they've been emailing me from all 4. It's coming from their current school address, from a previous school address, from an iCloud address, and from their personal address. And sometimes they don't remember which one they put on their application, so we invite them to interview, but that's not the account that they checked.
Yep.
So pick one. I would highly recommend picking one email address for your grad school communication, at least one per school.
And you might also consider not making that your school a George Fox address, because in a process like ours, you graduate and maybe you don't keep that school address or don't check it anymore. And then there's a big gap between when you're done with your undergrad degree and when you start your grad degree, and you're missing communication. So something to think about. If you have a personal address aside from a student address, it can be a smart move to use that.
What is nice is that the George Fox one, so they used to cancel your George Fox email a few years ago, and now they don't. So
keep checking
it is nice because you do have it.
Okay, good. That's great. Just don't lose track of being on top of checking that then. Yeah.
We've chatted already a little bit about being familiar with each school, but it's helpful to have your questions as you're calling or making a contact that are particular to that school. Knowing what some of the differences are when you reach out can really go a long way in just helping the conversation go smoothly as far as your clear interest in the program. Other things, Ty, as we move on our list here?
Yeah, so we'll cap our talk with visits and how to coordinate those, but really we love visitors. So and that means we love having student guests in classes, and we want to be able to do that well for you. That means we'll often connect you with a current student of that program for coffee or lunch, sit in on a class with them, meet with faculty. So we love visitors. We want you to visit, and most schools should want you to visit. Do it. Try to go out of your way to make that happen. So do some observation of the community as well as a professor in class. So yeah, we'll talk more about that in a minute. Review and follow application direction and admissions policies. I have confidence that everyone in here does that very, very well. And we received lots of questions prior to starting our talk tonight that proved that. I love it. But yeah, don't assume you know that maybe if you're applying to more than one school, that each process will be the same. It might
or even within George Fox.
Even within George Fox. And also, we receive this question quite a bit. Someone is applying to PsyD and counseling, and they want to know how much of their app could be, the one app that they've done, be utilized for both. They are completely separate applications, different references, as we've learned. You're doing 2 totally separate applications. So don't try to merge that even within one institution. They could look very different.
And we would encourage you to just keep in mind conscious communication. I don't think that's again a challenge for our George Fox culture, but you never know who exactly you're interacting with, and what role they might play in an admissions decision-making process down the road. For me, I get to work with applicants not as part of the decision-making process. I'm on the faculty admissions committee, but we've had students who've interacted, it's just maybe not with their best foot forward, with someone who was a faculty member and they didn't realize it, or to our director of graduate admissions. So you might think you're just being assertive with a receptionist at any school, and you have no idea who answered the phone. So just be your most professional self, even if you're not sure who you're communicating with. Would be my advice. Billy or Kyle, anything you would add as words of wisdom?
I definitely think visiting the campus is super important. I had a grad school that I was interested in, and when I visited the campus, it was a complete train wreck.
Oh.
Like, their program was brand new, they had like only a couple faculty, and they were still hiring people on for the school year that was starting, and oh my goodness. So yeah, definitely visit, and that's what I was saying, like, sit down with the people and ask them questions. Not to like test them, but definitely like you want to make sure they are who they say they are and they stand for what they say they do. So yeah, I would definitely recommend visiting campus, sitting in on a class for sure. Yeah.
And with that, with the visitation and practice conscious communication, so I think it's looked really good for the student when they do come to a campus visitation, and that will always get brought up on your application. So make like on those visits, you're always on, right? And that can be a little anxiety inducing, but this is an anxiety inducing thing, so that's okay. Normalize that. But knowing like when you visit campus, that the people you interact with, like they're gonna remember you, and ideally, you know, that's gonna be a really good thing. And I feel like usually it is.
Yeah.
But with the student that made, or the prospective student that made the call, like all of these contacts and the ways you communicate, I mean, that's all data for your application. So.
We don't forget.
All right, so always get the question, how do I strengthen my application? How do I be a strong applicant? It's a great question. We want to give you some general ideas around that, but we can get more specific in some areas. And we highlighted number 2 because it was a common question that came up specifically from Site Club folks. So first of all, calculate your GPA, know what that is, because often it's a surprise and kind of a stressor for students who get into senior year in particular, start filling out applications and realize that their cumulative GPA maybe doesn't meet a minimum requirement or is not where they want it to be a competitive applicant. So it's never too early to just know what that is and talk with your advisor or someone in student services about other courses you can take to help strengthen that. This is going to look a little bit different potentially for all 3 of our programs. For social work, it's not as common for applicants to have a lot of mental health field experience because a lot of their incoming new students are recent graduates. So that's not the highest priority in what our social work program is considering. Similar approach in counseling. We very intentionally don't require a bachelor's degree in psychology or any prerequisite coursework. We have students with backgrounds in, we've interviewed professional orchestra musicians, people from the animation and film industry with bioengineering background yesterday. That for some point or other have realized this is what I want to do and this is the right time. But some schools are going to be different and will tell you that they're looking for or prefer you to have some kind of volunteer work experience. So that is a way that you can strengthen your application, especially if the school tells you that it's important to them. How about scientific?
Yeah, so I want to hit home the following for PsyD. What you may or may not know is that 30 to 40% of our incoming students actually have already completed some grad work, sometimes a full graduate degree, and what often goes along with that is that they have done practicums, had internships, had experience in the field. Some of them have worked in paid career roles already in the field. And so it doesn't mean that it has to be, it's just that that's kind of what the stats look like for us. We have about 30 or 40% of our incoming classes is what it looks like. So you can't have too much volunteer or paid experience. And we're not distinguishing between the two when we look at someone's experience. Oh, this is just volunteer, so it doesn't count. Oh no, it does. But we want to see that you've amassed as much as you possibly can. I want to be careful as I say that because several of you in here have so much on your plates already. I'm not speaking to you. Don't take on any more. You're already maxing it out. But just in general, we are looking for that quite closely, and our students do come in with generally with some experience.
I know from our social work admissions counselor, often they've given the really good advice to identify references as you go. So if you're thinking ahead, I might go to grad school, I might need an academic reference, ask that faculty member now while you're in their class, can I follow up with you in a year? Can I circle back to you in a couple of years? Would you be willing to write a reference for me? And then it's less awkward to come back and do that later than feeling like, oh, I need a reference, who should I ask? I don't know. Same thing with a professional reference. If you've had an internship or a volunteer or just even in counseling, it doesn't have to be in the mental health field. A great professional or volunteer experience, you've had a good supervisor that you had a good connection with, ask them for that permission now. You don't have to wait till your application is due. This can be a really helpful tool. I met actually with a current psych student from George Fox within the past week who's intentionally seeking out an academic reference that person had a class with when they weren't doing so well and a class they have while they're doing better academically. And so that reference is able to talk about the academic growth, which is going to balance out a low GPA that this applicant's a little bit concerned about. So that can be another way to think about it. Yeah, you want to take the last detail?
Yeah. Of course, we would encourage you to interview, to shadow professionals. Know what you're getting into. What are the real realities? Not just like the exciting, glamorous stuff, but what is the reality? What are the challenges of this field? And you can go online and look at like different reviews in Glassdoor about what a profession might really be like. Contact people who do it, who've lived that experience for a while, and find out what they love about it, but also really investigate what's hard about it. Could you do that for your career? And then utilize opportunities for self-reflection. Oh, this is really good. I kind of bouncing off the idea of the applicant that Bethany had that really thought about how they could highlight themselves well with their academic reference. That's beautiful. And we were talking about this before we started. Don't ignore or gloss over tough things that may have happened to you academically or personally, or places maybe in your background that don't shine so well. Own them. Kyle, you said this earlier, and this is so true. We want to see that you can own that and show us how you've grown from it, and that you have depth that way. So when I think of self-reflection, I think of you can include those pieces. You're a human, you're a real person. Show us how you've grown. You can do that through essays, or you can pick references. You might be able to speak to that, but don't count your failures as they're learning opportunities. So include them.
I think the final thing we wanted to share to address your question specifically about number 2 were that you probably can relax in the question, what type of experience should I get? What population? How many hours? Where should it be? Who should be supervising it? That is great preparation for answering interview questions and writing your essay. We just went through our interview day yesterday for our spring applicants. Just from my observation and just a fly on the wall in the process, I would say it was really apparent which applicants knew that one of our counseling program's core values is multiculturalism and social justice. And it was really clear which applicants were not prepared for those conversations. That's in our mission statement on our website. Anyone could access that and figure out that that's what we're about, but not everybody takes the time to really get to know what's important to the faculty and the program that they're looking to. And if you're finding things where you're reading it, you're like, yeah, that's me. This is what I'm excited about. Be ready to connect those dots. So I would, this is more of a counseling prompt for you, but there's a lot you can answer by just having reflected on the questions. Why do I want to become this, and why do I want to career here at George Fox? That'll give you preparation for a lot of other follow-up questions that week.
Absolutely.
Other things on those two tabs?
Yeah, just know your core motivations, both like personally and programmatically. When you know that, Bethany is that's such an apt point of reference. Do know those things, and you'll be able to confidently and thoroughly answer what comes next. And then we talked a lot about choosing references, I think, throughout, so I don't know that we need to drill down more on that. As far as number 4, when you do a resume or CV, at least for the PsyD program, again, we do not want you to stress on the format of that resume, the style, follow a certain resume trend, don't really care. We just want to see a snapshot of you so that at a glance we can see quickly all those things that later we can dive down and drill into in your application. So do not pour too much time and energy into the resume portion. We're not picking it apart. We're not analyzing it. We're not judging it for style. It's just a snapshot.
On the other end of the spectrum, where I sometimes see applicants miss an opportunity, is they uploaded a very general resume that was maybe for like an IT desk job at George Fox. Didn't really like customize it at all. So like a happy medium is a good idea. Like make it clear that it's highlighting the things that are relevant to your application without choosing sleepovers.
I think our program has the polar end of worrying too much about every bit of that. I just answer so many questions weekly about the resume, and I realize people are losing sleep over it, and they just don't need to. You guys are awesome, and you're considering every piece, but like relax about this one, but not that
I'm about
relaxed.
to make phone calls saying, are you sure you uploaded it? Oh, you did? Okay. So leave it at that.
I think the difference is also just approaching it as a CV.
Yeah.
And like that was something when I was a senior in undergrad, it's like, oh, like I don't have a CV, I have a resume.
Yeah.
And then I got to study what a CV was. It's like, okay, this is academic, this is going to look different. So I think if you just research that briefly and like, okay, this is the difference between like a regular work resume. And I feel like that shines through in some of the applications.
Yeah,
like,
we do see some CV. Don't
when they
stress
see,
about it. But.
Yeah. But like when I see CV,
Yeah.
But I mean, gosh, if you've already
Yeah.
submitted a resume, I'm sure it's fine.
Yes.
But it's just something to mind.
No, that's good. That's good.
So maybe this is a good time to pause and give Carolyn maybe 5 minutes to answer your questions about research and applying. We won't dive in yet to maybe like student experience in the program, but anything else you want to ask them about. And we're going to hold off on interview questions because we're still going to get to that. But do you have any questions for them about being an applicant?
That's what is like the most common thing you see in the applications that really sets an applicant.
So it's not bad. I think, well, it is telling when there's a lot of grammatical errors. To me, you'll be surprised. Yeah. Like there are some, it's like, this is a big deal. Did you not give this to anyone to look over? I mean, you would think that this is a meaningful and important thing to do, and so you would give this to someone who could proofread it. So honestly, that's been a major turnoff, and that's a subjective, but I feel like it's pretty well shared. It's like when we have hundreds of applications, I do not want to spend time reading one that is poorly written. To me, I'm not going to put in the time that you didn't put into kindergarten.
Well said.
Or words of wisdom that the two of you have. just as far as remembering that kind of prep process?
Can I speak specifically on like references?
Yeah, absolutely.
When I was figuring out my references, I don't remember. I think it was for the master's. Is it 2 academic and 1 personal, or is it just academic?
No, it's 1 professional, 1 academic.
Okay. I only remember my academic one.
That's fine.
But
Doesn't matter.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I would say definitely pick somebody who knows. So for your academic, pick someone who knows you academically, but also like cares about your future goals and cares about you as a person. I think we can all speak on experiences where like we have professors that know us academically but not personally. But then there's also those professors that do know you personally and academically, and they genuinely care about you. And I think that those are the people that are going to wish the best for you and really have important things to say. And then also like sitting down with your references and asking them face to face can be a really like empowering experience. Because they, in that moment, like they can even share with you some things that they would like address in the letter that they're gonna write. And so I just think it's a really good opportunity to reach out to someone who you respect and who knows you in like different lights, specifically speaking on like the academic reference. Really like think about that intentionally and who knows you and can speak into that.
I agree with that. I think it's also really important to make sure that this person can write you a positive letter. So that's being straight up, with some of these professors. And hopefully, I trust the faculty here, they would be willing to say, I don't think I can give you what you're looking for. But ensuring that, you're going to get a positive reference. And I think with like Sue or Chris, I specifically said, are there areas of weakness that you've experienced in me that like you'd like me to speak to before you write? So I think that was also just really helpful to address my own growth areas with her, to make sure what I'm writing aligns with what she's writing. Because that's huge. Like if we get letters of reference that are not aligning with what the student is reflecting on, that's something you need to do. So just I think just diving into that